And with that, we'll just get right into it. So the first question is that I have for the panelists is to please introduce yourself, include your name, your major, the programs and schools that you have attended or are attending. And I guess we'll go ahead and start with Grace.
Hi, my name is Grace Moyon. I majored in microbiome and molecular genetics. I did my undergrad work at UCLA, but retook some prereqs at Irvine Valley College. I got my master's in physician assistant studies at Idaho State University in Meridian, Idaho. And I also have my master's of public health from George Washington University in Washington, D.C.
Great, thank you. May, would you like to follow up with that?
Yeah, hi, I'm May Shabani. I went to IVC for my prereqs and transferred to Chapman University, and then had a second stint at IVC to get some more uh, science uh, science credits under my belt before I applied to medical school. And I'm now going to the Norda College of Osteopathic Medicine in Utah. And yeah, I'm in my almost done with the first year.
Great, thank you. Catherine?
Hi, my name's Catherine Chung. I'm a business management major from Cal State Fullerton. And then I took some prereqs at IVC to go to Marshall B. Ketchum for Southern California College of Optometry. And I graduated in 2024, so not too long ago.
Thank you. And then Henry.
Hi everyone. My name's Henry. I'm a third year pharmacy student at UCSF. I completed my undergraduate studies at UC Irvine, and then I finished up the rest of my curriculum at IVC. Um, I worked at a few like inpatient, outpatient clinics, and in my last year of pharmacy school, I'll be going on to my rotations, and so I'd be happy to talk about that as well.
Great, thanks. So I'm gonna start off with the question and I'll sort of uh, uh, lead the charge. And the first question I want to start off with is what made you choose your specific healthcare profession? So if you could give a little bit of insight into like insight for the students that are following along, like how it is that you arrived at the current place that you're at now. I know that some of you have taken a non-traditional path and it wasn't necessarily linear, and many of our students would, sort of benefit from hearing an experience and a journey like that. So we'll start off with, we'll go backwards in order. Well, Henry.
Yeah. My route was a little odd. So I mean, I started out more traditionally when I got into Irvine, at UC Irvine. I actually didn't know what I wanted to do at the beginning, and then I stumbled across pharmaceuticals, and then I got into the pharmaceutical sciences major. Once I finished this pharmaceutical sciences major, I took on like a lead technician role. I worked at like the Ralphs in Southern California at like I think the Lake Forest location for like 2 years. And all of my pharmacists over there, I loved working with them. I loved working with the pharmacists. I loved what they did. And I think it really allowed me to combine like lots of different elements that I personally enjoyed, which was like direct patient care, science, and advocacy. Those are like the three big things I really enjoyed while I was working at the Lake Forest location. And then also like having my own like small niches with like volunteering, things like healthcare work. I think I have always known I wanted to do healthcare. I just didn't know exactly where I would end up. And eventually I ended up being encouraged by my pharmacist to go ahead and apply for pharmacy school. They were like, "You'll be great. You just try for it, like see where it goes." And so upon like I think my second year of like taking my gap year, I had applied for pharmacy school, and then I got into UCSF, and that's and the rest is history.
So I just wanted to highlight, you mentioned that you had a gap year.
Yeah, I had actually two gap years between my undergraduate, completing my undergraduate degree and then going into pharmacy school. So during that time period, I paid off my student loans. I decided to see what other option routes were available for me before I decided to settle into going back into pharmacy school.
Great, thank you. Catherine, the question was what made you choose your specific healthcare profession? How did you arrive at where you're at today?
So mine was very non-traditional as well. I was a business major. My family did do optometry, and I have like three optometrists in the family. I was kind of meant to do that by with parents, pressure. But I kind of tried to avoid that and try to do my own thing. So that's why I became a business major. I did have a 10-year gap year, so quite large. So during that time, I was just working for government and city and also like a real estate agent. And then I met my husband, who is a pharmacist, and he kind of pushed me to try. So then I started taking courses at IVC, and then I was like, oh, let's just see if I can get in. And then it happened. So here I am.
Great, thank you. May, what made you choose your specific healthcare profession, or how did you arrive at where you're at?
So mine was kind of interesting because I was pursuing soccer first. I was on my way to trying to sign my first professional contract, and through a lot of injuries, I was always seeing orthopedic surgeons. And I was at that time when I was seeing them for like 3 years, where I was like, if I'm not going to play soccer, I want to do what these guys are doing and helping people kind of get back into their sport. And then from there, this was during my time in Chapman, I started getting involved in volunteering and other clinical opportunities, which kind of grew my interest for the field. And that's when I decided, this is something I want to do as a career.
Great, thank you. Thanks for that. And then Grace.
So I guess the non-traditional is kind of traditional. I also did not know what I wanted to do when I was an undergrad. I knew I wanted to work in health. Like I really enjoyed the science and medicine and the challenge of using that to help others. But uh, to be honest, I did not want to go the med school route. Didn't want to didn't have the time or the money, or maybe didn't want to put in that much for med school. Also, just me personally, I never wanted to like run my own clinic or really be the one in charge. So I worked as a medical assistant while I was an undergrad, just to kind of introduce myself to the different professions. So I got to work with a lot of RNs, NPs, PAs, MDs, DOs. And just so through that experience, I realized that the physician assistant route was for me. There's a lot of flexibility in the profession where you're not necessarily tied down to one specialty. You can, of course, work in any specialty you want and stay there, but you also have the flexibility to move around if you get burned out or just wanted to change. PA programs are typically shorter, between 2 and 3 years, and you don't have quite as much of the student loans as med school does, I believe, but there's still a good amount, but not as much. And the PA role, they tend to work more in like a collaborative approach. Again, not wanting ever to be the one in charge. You can be as a PA, but we tend to work more in teams. You usually have a supervising physician present, or you have other APPs around you always. So just a very supported role.
Thanks. There was a question that came in the chat, and it sort of is a good segue to the next question I wanted to ask, and I'm going to start off with May. And the question I wanted to ask was, what did you wish you knew before you started your professional school and the work in your specific area of practice? And it kind of ties directly into a question that we had in the chat, which is, can you tell us the difference and the distinction between a MD and a DO?
Yeah,
Because
so
that was something that came in. And so,
sure.
on our panel, this is exactly why we do this. We try to give exposure to a lot of options in healthcare that maybe are not more traditionally known. And that like definitely like a PA was something that I did not know existed as a profession. And DO was something that I did not know existed. So May, can you shed some light on what the difference between an MD and a DO is? And then you can roll into the answer. The question is, what did you wish you knew before you started your professional school?
Sure. Yeah. So MD and DO, they're both doctors. They both do all the same things. The only difference is a DO is a little bit of a newer profession, I guess. It's, I think, 70 or 80 years old, but DO has a more holistic approach. And that's like one of the main things. And then the other main thing is that we learn OMM, or osteopathic manual manipulation, on top of the medical curriculum. So we learn all the same stuff, but we also have, I think it's like 500 hours of OMM, and that's where we're learning treatments with our hands. So different type of treatments, pretty much just hands-on treatment. And so that's something that differentiates us from MD. And then also, I believe MD has some more hours in pharm, and we have more hours in anatomy, is what my understanding is as another difference. Other than that, though, everything is the same. And then what's something I wish I knew? There's a lot I wish I knew before, but I think the main thing is how difficult it truly is. Because I feel like I didn't, people say, but I never really got a grasp of how hard it really is. And so I wish I would have prepared maybe more doing things that are difficult before I got into med school and just upping your stress tolerance, because it really does get tested while you're here.
Thank you. I want to bounce it back to Grace, and also if you could provide clarification for those in the audience that don't know the difference between an MD and what a physician's assistant or PA is, or what does the PA stand for now? Is it physician's assistant or physician's associate, or both acceptable now?
Yeah, both are acceptable now. It started as physician assistant, but the the AAPA, or the Association for Assistants, did obtain that title change to physician associate, because we're we are assistants in that we support the physician, but we can also, be in a clinic without the physician present. So now it's more associate because of that more collaborative relationship that we have. And what
And
was
the
your
original
original
question was,
question?
the original question is, what did you wish you knew before you started your professional school
Oh,
career?
yeah, I wish I had known about the PA role. I that was part of what I was learning working as a medical assistant. The challenge of finding out about the PA role later is most PA programs require your prereqs to be within maybe about 2 years of applying to PA school. So I think I was maybe 5 years out before I realized that, PA school is what I wanted to do, which is why I needed to retake quite a few prerequisites to update those classes. But that being said, I'm glad I had to do it, because I would not have been prepared for PA school if I had not refreshed that knowledge. So, yeah.
Henry, I'll bounce it over to you. What did you wish you knew before starting into pharmacy?
Yeah, something I really wish I knew about before I got into pharmacy school was probably how much learning takes place outside of pharmacy school. I think like a lot of things I took away or like that are very useful for me now are things I wouldn't like have expected to be super useful for me. So for example, like there are like certain drugs that I was like I'd go through at like my pharmacy clinics or like when I'm just like doing volunteer work that just seemed like so in passing and they didn't seem like they mattered at the time. So I would do volunteer work for like a clinic where we took T scores, which is essentially like bone testing to see how dense someone's bone is and if they're at risk for like a fracture. And that just seemed like something that was just in passing. But as I've like gotten more into pharmacy school and gotten more into the role, I realized that this was actually something really big that I did, and that was actually really important. So I wish I took the things outside of school a little more, maybe a little more seriously. And I think like a lot of the things I learned outside of there were actually really applicable my current field or to what I'm doing now. Um, and then I think I see a question that asked me. Yeah, my major at Irvine was actually in biology. I was actually in pharmaceutical sciences, but it's like very adjacent to biological sciences. And so I was there for about 4 years. And then usually students who get their biological sciences degree or pharmacy degree or pharmaceutical sciences degree, and they usually do a transfer to a pharmacy school, and that requires another like application process, interview process.
Okay, great, thanks. And then, Catherine, I wanted to ask you, because when I was a student, I didn't fully understand the difference between an optometrist and an ophthalmologist. And I know that many people know that it has to do something with the eye, but if you could provide some clarification on what the difference between an optometrist is and does, and the type of schooling they go to, and what an ophthalmologist is and does, and what kind of schooling they go to. Because I know it's very different. And if you could shed some light on that,
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, it's very different. So as an optometrist, you just go to a 4-year optometry school,
Mhm.
and then you're able to do eye exams and diagnose disease and treat and RX meds. You can't do surgeries. That's the main difference. So for
Mhm.
an ophthalmologist, they have to first go to get their MD, so 4 years for that, and then also fellowship and residency on top of that to focus on ophthalmology. And then they're mainly doing surgeries. So that's the main difference.
Okay. And then
Um,
I just wanted
and
to ask you
then
the question, what did you wish
yeah.
you knew before you started your professional school or career?
So like May said, it was just how challenging it was. I think people kind of tell you like, oh yeah, it's challenging, but you'll get through it, you know? But then like I think I didn't realize exactly how challenging it is. It might have been because of my gap and I was just doing a lot of prereqs more recent, but I hadn't really gone to like traditional college for like 10 years. So it was kind of like being thrown into it was a little crazy, just taking like 7 classes and then 3 or 4 labs on top of that, and then having midterms like 1 or 2 times a week. It was just it's like the grind of it was a lot more intense than I expected. Like the first 2 years, at least.
Okay. I'm going to go off script a little bit, and I know that some of you had been in panels with me before, but I think the question I want to ask next is something that maybe a lot of students are interested in knowing about. And it's, could you describe a typical day in your life right now as either a first year student in this program or a finishing up student in this program or as the working professional on the panel? Could you just talk about what a typical day in your life is like right now? And Catherine, I'll have you start with that. And if you could remind everybody like where you're at with your schooling and or career, and that'll provide some context.
So
Typical
I
day.
did finish I graduated in May and I finished all my schooling. I am studying for boards right now. I just took them, so I'm just waiting for my results. But once that's done, it'll just be working like 10 to 7, which is what I liked about optometry is because you don't
Mhm.
have to really bring your work home with you and you have like set hours. So the flexibility in your schedule is really nice. And then the work-life balance is kind
Yes.
of what I liked about it. So yeah.
Okay. May I bounce it over to you? Just I know that you're in your first year at Norda, but if you could provide like a snapshot on what a typical day
Yeah,
looks
yeah,
like.
for
We
sure.
can see some of the work that you're doing like in
Yeah,
the
we got
background
a little bit of
whiteboard.
work back there. So the thing about my school that's really cool, and one of the reasons why I picked it is that everything's online. We have 2 days on campus, and then you can be on campus as much as you want other than that, but 2 days mandatory. So my off-campus days look like I wake up in the morning, and as soon as I wake up, I come straight to my desk with a coffee, and I'm studying all the way until 6 o'clock minimum. And then I try to eat dinner, work out, review something again, and then go to sleep and do it again. And then the on-campus days is we're going there for labs or I'm going there for research. And so that's probably 2 or 3 times a week. And that takes up about 4 hours probably. And after that, I'm back and I'm just watching content, doing third-party resources, and then Anki review. And that's pretty much every day.
Are you working in groups with other students? Are you doing case studies, or can you like how does it
Yeah,
work?
so oh yeah, so sorry, I forgot to mention it. My school has this thing called pods where they assign you based off of a personality test that you took before you came,
Hmm.
and they put you into groups of three. It depends. You can say how big of a group you want, but my group was 5 members, and then you have scheduled time with your pod on campus where it's like a room that's like soundproof with whiteboards on the walls and TVs and stuff, and you have that room for 2 hours every day. It started off good, but as we the content piled up, the pods kind of separate, and it depends on how you learn. Like for me, I need to go through content on my own, and I like doing questions with other people. And so everyone just has their own schedule now. We meet up outside of campus or on campus and study together. Research is collaborative. Labs are all with other people collaborative. And so there's a lot of opportunity to do stuff with other people. It just really depends on where you're at with your studying at that time.
Great, thanks. Henry, as a first year student in pharmacy, can you give us a snapshot and what a typical day is like?
Yeah, just to clarify, I am in my final year of pharmacy school.
Oh, I'm
Uh,
sorry.
but it's okay.
Has it been that
Um,
long? It's like I feel like
I know.
we
It
were just
feels
in
like
my
I just saw
class
it.
like not that long ago, but I guess it's been that long. Oh wow.
It's been about 3 years, almost 3 years. So anyways, so since I've been, my typical day would usually look like, well, usually there's rotations. I have one rotation each day of the week. There's like your introductory pharmacy rotations and then your advanced pharmacy practice rotations. And so during your first 2 years of pharmacy school, you do things called introductory pharmacy rotations, in which every week, once a day, one day a week, you go out, like usually it's either a Monday or a Wednesday, depending on which block you're in. You go out to like go do like a clinic work, or you go into you go to like a hospital, you go to an outpatient setting, inpatient setting, to an ambulatory clinic. You'll go to like one of these clinics, and you'll work there essentially. You'll just be like one of the employees, but you're like learning there. It's like a learning kind of experience, and you rotate between each one of those about every like 10 weeks or so. So they're like really long-term experiential growth things, so you can experience different parts of pharmacy. And then for the remaining 4 days of the week, usually we have about like one day hybrid, and it's usually one day is like online, and then the remaining 3 days are like kind of in person. My school has been really switching back from hybrids, back to in person. It's been really a big drive to pushing things in person lately, and so I've noticed like I go to campus like a lot more. I live pretty close to the School of Pharmacy, so I just like it's just like a couple of blocks away from me. So it's a lot of it is just going to school, usually from like 9 to like 3, I'd say, and they have like an hour gap for lunch. And then usually the rest of the day is either spent studying, typically most of the time. A lot of the time, it's like it feels like you're cramming all the time because there's an exam every 2 to 3 weeks. And
Wow.
then after every 10 weeks, you have about a week break. So that's about how it goes.
Great. Thanks. And then Grace, what's a typical day like for you as a working professional, as a PA?
Yeah, my work setting's a little unique. I work for a federally qualified health center currently, which is like a community-based, federally funded safety net clinic. So three three quarters of my schedule, I have a clinic that looks like 8 to 6, I guess, where I come in a little bit early to see what my schedule looks like to kind of prepare for it. And then I'm seeing patients I'm 5 years into working as a PA. I guess I should say that as well. So I have a patient scheduled like every 15 to 30 minutes. So on average, I might see about 14, 15 patients a day. Um, and part of being an FQHC in an underserved area is we also kind of serve as an urgent care. So on top of my scheduled patients, we do have walk-ins on the daily. So just being able to be flexible with that. And then I probably spend about an hour or so completing charting, but I do not like to take my work home. So I will stay in the clinic until all my charts are done. But once I'm home, I don't have to bring work home with me. The other quarter of my schedule is being on call. So as PAs, we actually are on call 1 week out of the month where we can help with overflow at the clinic. So if the PA clinic does get a lot of walk-ins, they can call us and for additional support. And we also run on the ambulance in town. So we do a lot pre-hospital care in an underserved area. So any 911 calls that go out, we are on the ambulance with the EMTs and to help determine if we need to get the patient to the clinic or to the nearest hospital, which is about an hour out by ambulance, or we call in
Wow.
life flight if needed, if it's more emergent. So every day is very different and a fun challenge.
So, if I can ask, as a PA, are you where you're working? You have to sort of know everything. So, like, you could see a gunshot wound patient, and you can see like a little kid with pink eye. Is that the range of things that you can see?
Yeah, it's very varied. So I actually just, and to maybe this kind of answers the question I saw in the chat earlier. I
Yep.
recently made this move to the to primary pre-hospital care. I worked in oncology up until October of last year. So just as of November, I'm in this new setting, and it's a lot of relearning everything that they crammed in during PA school that I haven't used in 5 years. So it's been really interesting, and things do come back, but I am still relearning a lot. And so, yes, very varied between uh, annual preventative health care to pink eye to uh, car accidents or heart attacks. So yeah, you get to see a huge variety.
Great, thanks. I want to acknowledge that I do see that there are questions coming to the chat. And what we had intended to do is we're going to consolidate those questions and then go through them towards the sort of the end of the panel. But again, you have questions, those of you on the audience, type them in. If there's somebody, if for somebody in particular, address it to that person in particular too. And then those of you that are on the panel, feel free to respond back to the chat if it's something that's directed towards you that can be helpful if you're not actively providing a response. Um, but so we will give time for that for certain specific insights for individuals. But for the generalized types of questions, I wanted to ask the next one. And I think that, again, this would be helpful to everybody that's listening. And again, it's not one of the questions that's on the provided script. It's a little bit off script, but it's if you could provide, the question is, if you could talk about and provide information about the academic preparation that's needed for this career, like your undergraduate coursework, the type of exam, the entrance exams that you need to take, if any, if you need patient hours in order to apply for the program that you need in, how long your program is. And then I saw that there was kind of a question there about uh, like, did you get scholarships and financial aid, and how would one go about seeking that? Because these programs presumably cost a lot of money. So the questions are, again, if you could talk about your academic preparation needed for the career, like the type of coursework you think is necessary and relevant that the programs want you to have and want you to take, the required entrance exams if needed, if there's a certain number of patient hours that you need to accumulate, and then uh, the last one was like what financial options are were available to you or that you took. So let's start with Henry on that question.
Yeah. So for me, the pharmacy school route, typically most students it is required to have a Bachelor of Science. So typically you have to either complete a 4-year degree or 3-year degree, however you can, through a Bachelor's of Science. Once you finish your Bachelor of Science, I would actually recommend going through like the specific school. Most schools require a microbiology like class. So I had to go back to IVC to go get that microbiology course. A lot of students, like a lot of like pharmacy students, like miss out on that. And so you have to like make sure you go through the schools. Like there's specific sets, like although they do require a BS, it doesn't actually encapsulate all the curriculum that is offered for each BS school. And so some schools require some other things. So I would recommend if you're looking into pharmacy school, go to their website, like look at which specific curriculum is required for that school. UCSF requires microbiology. I think all of them do. And it's not offered under the pharmaceutical sciences like UCI, like UC Irvine School. And so I had to go do that somewhere else. And then with regards to scholarships and grants, so I am a recipient of the Pell Grant from the federal government, and that helps me pay for some of the school. I also am a recipient of like the lower interest loans from student loans, and I also get the local scholarships from UCSF. So when you apply to UCSF, after you apply, they're really nice about like doing their scholarships and keeping your eye out for those. They'll send you like a huge email list of like all these scholarships you can apply to. I think I received just one of them. It's like a small amount for like I do receive one scholarship from the school, and they try really hard to. UCSF tries really hard to like spread out the scholarships, so when like, one person gets one, like not everybody can try and get them. I think they have like 30 scholarships or something like that, and there's only like a class of like 120 of us. So,
Was there a for pharmacy school, is there a specific entrance exam that you need to take?
oh, sorry about that. So for some schools, they require something called the PCAT.
Okay.
UCSF had dropped their requirement for the PCAT. I think, and during my year, so during my year of like I think I'm class of 2026, so there shouldn't be a requirement anymore for an exam. You can still take it if you think, if you want to like have a stronger like score, or if you think you have a really strong score for it, but it's not required anymore. Pretty similar to I think nowadays like how the SATs and the ACTs are not required for
So
colleges.
just for clarification, PCAT is Pharmacy College Admission Test. Is that what that is?
Yes, it is. That's
Okay.
correct. The pharmacy and college admission test.
Okay. Great. May, if you could provide a little bit of insight on the academic preparation needed, like prerequisite courses, entrance exams that you need to take, patient hours,
Yeah, so
scholarship.
similar to what Henry said, I think the best thing to do is look at the school you want and see what their requirements are. Everything is so different. I think everyone knows about the pre-med courses you need to take, the prereq courses, sorry, for pre-med. And then after you do those, definitely look at the schools you're interested in and see what they say specifically, because there can be differences. There can be one class like immunology, for example, that might disqualify you from a school and it's not on the pre-med prereq class list. So definitely just look at the schools you want to go to and see what they say. In terms of what you need, like for me, I would recommend you guys also who are interested in medical school to do the COPE Health Scholar program. That's a program that you can get like 200 hours, volunteer hours in the hospital, and you can get a lot of good hands-on and see if you really enjoy this profession. I was also doing Habitat for Humanity and doing construction work for volunteering hours. And then I had clinical hours working with a chiropractor. Um, there's a lot of hours. You need clinical, volunteering
Is there
for
a magic
sure.
number of hours that you need to have?
I don't know, to be honest. I had like 200 something volunteering. I had from Hogue, I had I think 40 with Habitat for Humanity. I had thousands of hours of clinical, and then you can put other things. Like for me, I put soccer, I put those hours. Um, Research, I had research at Chapman, and they asked for your hours about that too. Um, and these are all things that they ask you about on your interview as well. So it's not like to just go and get the hours checked off. The stories you tell from these experiences you have are big things in your interview process as well. But those would be the main things I think that I remember that I did. Um,
Is there
and then,
an entrance exam that you need to take for DO school?
yeah, so DO and MD, you need to take the MCAT for both of those. I took the MCAT twice. The first time I didn't know it was gonna be that hard. I studied for like 3 months. And then I want to be transparent because I wish I knew these things when I was doing it. And I scored a 499. And then I took it again 7 months later, and then I got a 510. And the thing that I would recommend to all you guys to look into is a thing called UWorld. And UWorld has a MCAT question bank that is super, super difficult. And it really puts you down after you take a test and you score like 30%, but it prepared, like I did that question bank 3 times in a row. Like I had the questions memorized, and that prepared me so much more than any other resource. And I think you can just pay for however long you want to use that application for. So that was a big thing that helped me a lot for the second time I was taking the MCAT.
Catherine, can you talk about the academic preparation needed for optometry school, and then the required entrance exams, patient hours, like what financial aid you were able to get, or where the students can look for that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so you just need a bachelor's for optometry school, and then you do have to take an entrance exam called the OAT, the Optometry and Admissions Test. For that, I did use Kaplan to help me study for that. I feel like with the scores for that, most schools kind of look for, so it's out of like 400, but most schools look for anything over 300, and then they start looking at your application. So that's like the magic number for that. For any shadowing or prereqs for that, there's none required. It's definitely helpful for your application and for optometry school to know what goes on in an optometry office and what lenses are and stuff like that. But there was a lot of students in my class that didn't have any experience working at all. They just went to school and had never worked before or stepped in a optometry office besides their own eye exams. Other than that, it's just your basic like bio courses, and something that was a little different is physics. So you do need a couple classes in physics to get into any optometry school. I didn't know prior, but optometry is like a lot of physics, like physiological optics and ophthalmic optics. Just so much physics that I had no idea. But yeah, so that, and then I think that's it. Yeah.
Great, thanks.
I
And
think
then,
they might not require the OAT anymore. I'm not sure.
oh
Some
yeah.
schools I think changed to GRE, but I'm not sure which ones.
And then Grace, academic preparation needed for PA school or being a PA, required entrance exams, patient hours, available scholarships. And then there was a question, I'll tie it in from that somebody asked, and it was something about the GRE. It says, did you take the GRE before you applied to PA school? Also, is it true that PAs are required to take continuing ed or con ed courses every 2 years in order to renew their license?
Yeah, so yeah, for PA applications, I would say it comes down to your GPA, your clinical or volunteer hours, and the GRE. That being said, man, that really oversimplifies the PA application process. It's probably the most disorganized process I've ever been through, and I hope that doesn't intimidate anyone. But it's just you really have to put in the research because PA schools have their own deadlines. Like they're not on this rolling cycle, like I think as like most med schools are. Every PA school has their own deadline. So it's literally spread out throughout the year. You do have a central application called the CASPA, but every school also has their own secondary application. They have their own deadlines. They have their own prerequisites that they desire. So some will say, and this kind of answers the previous question I saw, like generally for math classes, English classes, even physics, they, as long as you've completed them at some point, they'll accept it, but then they'll also be very specific in they want this many units in like chemistry, and that has to have been done within like 1 year of applying. Or, microbiology, they want this many units, and that has to be within the past 2 years of applying to the school. And every school is different for that. And that also goes for your clinical or volunteer hours. Every school has their own um, minimum of how many hours they want to see. Some will specify if they want that to be actual clinical hours versus just volunteer hours. Um, it's a lot to keep track of. So the way I approached PA applications is I actually just looked at every PA school in the country, where I was willing to live for at least 2 years of my life. And then I looked at the prereqs of those schools. If there were certain classes that I wasn't willing to retake, like I really struggled with um, biochem. It's just a foreign language to me. And so if a school really wanted me to retake biochem, like 2 years worth, I was not willing to do that. So they would get crossed off my list. Um, Tuition's very different, class size is very different. So that also, their PA schools are getting thousands of applicants every year. Most classes are really small. We had class sizes as small as 15. You rarely have more than 50 in a class, so it's a difficult process. And most people actually apply more than once to PA school. So if you don't get in your first round, do not be discouraged. It's actually very normal just because they can't take all the applications that they receive. So most PAs will apply 2, 3 times before they get accepted. So it's competitive, but it's doable, and you just have to be willing to put in the time and the work and show them that you really want it. As far as financial assistance or grants, same thing. Every school is just so different. So you really just have to do the research on the unique prerequisites that each school requires. Some PA schools do not require the GRE, but most do. So if you're interested in the PA profession, I would just go ahead and take the GRE so that you have, more options available to you. Some rarely, but there are some schools required the MCAT even when I applied. I think USC was one of them. So again, do the research, see what you're willing or not willing to go through to get into that school. But as the GRE is for most PA schools is required.
So there are a lot of uh, questions in the chat. Hey, Tuan, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Is there an easy way for us to get through some of these questions in the chat? I mean, I know that we're coming
Yeah.
up on
Let me
15.
see if we have that list. Okay. So we could post it up. I think we sorted it by different categories. So just give me a minute to get that
Okay,
together. All right.
that's fine.
And then
I'll
one
go
or
on.
two of them, I might be able to answer one or two of the questions specifically. Okay.
Okay. So I can see that Catherine has volunteered to answer some of the questions in the chat regarding the difference between fellowship and residency. Um, let's see.
Right now, Kat posted them in the chat, so she's going section by section.
Oh, okay. Um, let's let's go with, can you get paid can you get paid while volunteering? I think by the nature of volunteering, you're not getting paid. I mean, that's just you're
Yeah,
getting
no.
time, like you're volunteering your time, right? And then hopefully the exchange in the end is that you'll get your hours and maybe a letter of rec out of the experience. Is that typically how it
Yeah,
works?
no pay for volunteering. You can get paid for clinical hours, but volunteering has to be strictly just out of your own time.
Mm. Um, I- let's see, Grace, how many times did you change your specialty as a PA? Was it difficult or lengthy to switch? Can you answer that in
Uh,
like 30 seconds?
yeah, I've been working 5 years as a PA, but I only made the switch once from oncology to primary pre-hospital care. Not difficult. You know, PAs are in pretty high demand, so it was easy to get the second job, but it was difficult in that I am relearning everything. So keep that in mind when you're making a transition to a different specialty.
Uh, Michelle had a question. I don't know if it was in the congregated, but this is something that also I think could weigh on a lot of students between the DO versus MD. And the question from Michelle was, what factors influence your decision to pursue DO over MD?
Yeah, I think the holistic approach is a big thing for me. I really
Can
wanted
you, can
to,
you briefly talk about what that is? I know that some of us in the
yeah,
audience
sure,
may not know, like they've heard the word, but they don't know exactly how it applies in this situation. Could you
sure.
elaborate on that a little bit?
So the holistic approach, the whole thing behind it is to find a root cause of whatever the patient has and then treating a root cause rather than treating symptoms. And for me, going into this, that was very important because personally, I mean, medication has its role, but I wanted to see if there's things that I can do before prescribing medication, for example, like a brief overview. And I really like the OMM and how you can use your hands to treat. Like I'm very interested in sportsmen and ortho, and so I really want to have the skills to be able to do different treatments with my hands before necessarily surgery or before medication, things like that. And so that was the main driver, the main deciding factor for me was that whole idea where we're learning everything through the lens of a holistic approach.
Okay. This question was for Catherine, but I know that some of you had taken gap years. So the question was, what challenges had you encountered during the program? What advice would you give to students who have taken extended gap year or face difficulties getting into the program? Henry, I know that you said you took two gap years. They weren't two consecutive years, right? It was like a gap year, and then you took another gap year. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, I took two consecutive gap years.
Oh, okay.
So I took two consecutive gap years, and then I took IVC courses to get back into it, I think. Um, Honestly, I will say it was pretty hard. I think I was really lucky to encounter Pierce class right before I went into pharmacy school. I think that class really like set me back up into like a good study habits, into like his class really set me up for success because the way the classes are formatted are actually really similar, where it's like high test taking, frequent high like consistent studying. It rewards individuals who like repeatedly grind, not on like a crunch kind of schedule, but more like a consistent schedule where you always study every day for like a couple hours. It like that's like the work environment that I had to do for microbiome, and then it just kind of segued so well into the rest of my career, really, so far.
So even though you took those 2 consecutive years for your gap, coming back and taking your prereqs felt like it prepared you into going into
Absolutely.
pharmacy
Yeah.
or whatever professional school that you chose to go into.
Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely. Definitely going back to take my prereqs just to brush up on my things. Really like I took that prereq really seriously. Just because like for microbiology I did take it really seriously. I would like even though I knew I was like, oh, I just need to pass this class and then I'll go to the school. But I took it really seriously because I was like, this is like a testament to like how I'm gonna be treating for like the next couple of years. And after taking 2 gap years, I had felt like I'd taken such a long break. I had just been working through that time, so this was like, can I like see how can I develop habits that are sustainable, unlike my undergrad years?
Thanks. Catherine, I know that you took some time in
Yeah.
between, and actually you did a career change. It's like, you did
Yeah.
something, went to school for one thing, you worked in that field, and then you did a total pivot to something else. Can you talk about some of the challenges that you experienced with that and like give advice to some students that are maybe considering like doing a career change?
Yeah, I think the 10-year gap year was definitely challenging. The prerequisites definitely helped kind of get back into studying again. I did have another gap year after the prereq. So after I submitted my application for optometry school, there was waiting for the next year, the school year schedule to come around. So that was like another almost a year gap of just waiting. But I feel like what was challenging for me was I was kind of old school. So I would kind of write everything, and that's kind of how I studied, just writing pen and paper. But in optometry school, there's so much information. I think for any of these schools, there's so much information you don't have the time to do that. So it's like I had to switch to actually typing, and even that was hard because it's like so time consuming. But that's how I found that I worked the best, like learning it as actually typing it and then reading it over and over into like how I like it outlined. Um, let's see. But I think just learning how you study the best, because you're kind of thrown into it and you kind of have to already know how you study it most efficiently because there's not much time to like learn all that. So yeah.
And then Grace or May, did you take any like did you have a gap years and like what challenges did you experience like in that time? And just to be clear, like my impression is, and tell me if I'm wrong, that when you took your gap years, like you on the panel, it's not like you're loafing around like and backpacking through Europe. Like you were doing something towards the goal that you're at, right? I mean, you're not just sitting around playing video games, right? I mean, that's so I just want to dispel the notion of what a gap year is or could be, but you're doing something towards your end goal. Is that I'm not wrong there, right?
No, I think that's accurate. Like my gap year wasn't by choice. I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So between graduating undergrad and applying for PA school, I was working as a medical assistant the entire time. So by the time I applied, because I worked as a medical assistant in undergrad too. So by the time I applied for PA school, I think I had 12 plus years as a medical assistant, which really worked in my favor because PA schools like seeing that kind of experience. Usually they weigh clinical experience more than volunteer experience. So a lot of my peers who are applying for PA school struggled with that the most because some schools want so many hours and they just didn't have that. So gap year was not loafing around. I was working really hard and then
Right.
retaking prereqs while working as a medical assistant. And I think once I knew I got into PA school, I did like do a big trip for like 2 weeks to kind of just, let myself
Sure.
reset and enjoy life before getting into the grind.
May any last contributions as far as gap year stuff, or I can't recall if you had taken a gap year or
I think I was like a year and a half where I was just doing, I pretty much took a year at IVC to get more science and bio credits. And then I was studying for the MCAT and working pretty much. So I was getting clinical hours, I was taking more credits and then studying for the MCAT. And that was pretty much it. And then as soon as I finished that, I got my scores, started doing the applications, and then was rolling from there.
Okay, we are coming up on the end of our time, but I just wanted to ask Tuan if there was any questions that you saw that came through the chat that you think could be posited to the panel at, like that would be beneficial. Otherwise, I'll kind of ask some wrapping up questions to the panelists. Tuan?
Yeah, I think we should probably just do the wrap-up questions, okay?
Okay,
Because
so
we're given the time too.
yeah, so in like 30 seconds, 45 seconds, I'll pose the question to you. What do you like most about your profession and why? May.
I think obviously besides helping people, because that's what we're all here to do, right? I think the thing that I like the most is there's no cap to what you can do. You can always learn more. You can always learn better techniques. You can always derive your own things that can improve the outcome for the patient ultimately. And that's, I think, one of the most attractive things of this profession for me.
Uh, thank you. Henry?
For me, I really love community and I love the patients. As much as like we love helping people, I love chit-chatting with my patients, like learning about their lives, really getting to know people. And also I really like pharmacy because it's a lot more flexible than I had realized. And that's something I came to realize when I got to this school, or had realized there's a lot more options. They can lead into they lead into other fields. You can go back to industry, you can work in clinicals for a long time, and then make a sudden pivot to like oncology, and that's like a very normal pivot that a lot of pharmacists do after working in like inpatient for a long time. And so I hadn't realized how much variation there could be within my field.
And then with pharmacy, you can kind of develop a longer term relationship because these are people that are like dependent upon these meds, right?
Yeah,
Unlike
so
you wouldn't
yeah,
necessarily develop a long-term relationship with somebody that you treat for a gunshot wound, right? Like in the emergency room. But like for somebody that's, every 3 months fulfilling their medication, that's like a relationship building thing, right?
yeah, absolutely. I think you develop even when I worked like in a community setting, you really do develop those relationships, and you are honestly really like the last line of like voice between the health field and then like the patient once they like leave the hospital, once they get their outpatient meds. You're like the last touch point before they go off onto the rest of their lives.
Okay, thanks. Grace, what do you like most about your profession?
Yeah, pretty similar. Like I just love that I am able to help these patients, and I as PAs, I think we do get a more opportunity to build relationships with our patients. So you're not just treating and treating them. You really become a really important part of their lives, and they will tell you that they really appreciate that you've been able to sit there and listen to them, and then make a difference in their day or their life somehow. And every day is different. Like even when I was specializing in oncology, like even though it was just oncology, like no patient responds the same way to treatment. No patient is affected the same way by their disease. So you will never be bored. You will always be challenged in the best way. And you'll be it's very fulfilling to be able to be that for patients and to grow as a person from that.
Sure. Catherine?
I think for optometry, it's definitely like work-life balance is the main thing that a lot of students
Mhm.
like about it. There's also, like Grace said, the having that one-on-one relationship with the patient and being able to talk to them, helping them see and then how happy and excited they are. And also with optometry, a lot of it is still private practice owned. So I liked that idea because I do want to own my own practice. Um, yeah, and then also the ability to be able to help people, others in the community. You don't really need like that whole exam machine and stuff. You can bring all the stuff with you to like a different country and kind of help people there with just glasses and lenses, So I liked that also because that's something I want to do in the future.
Great. Hey, I want to thank everybody so much. I want to respect the time. Tuan, do we have any parting things that we need to say on
I don't
your
know,
end?
I think necessarily anything particular, but one thing I would say is for the students in here, okay? Here's my general advice to you, okay? The pathway for the various pre-health professions is, in my experience, quite challenging because every single nursing, PA, PT, med school DO versus MD programs. A lot of similarities, but a lot of differences in classes and so forth. So throughout your journey, if you can, please look for those counselors, pre-med advisors, faculty members who could really be of support, okay? And who could really show you the details, the process of doing it, okay? And really coach you through the process. So if you're able to find that, whether it be at the community college or at the university, then please, definitely connect with them multiple times to help you through the process. I mean, definitely do your own homework and research and go directly to the source. Okay, but utilize your resources available. So the students who are at IVC, they fortunately do have myself and also, some faculty members here at your community college. If you have a MESA program or a STEM counselor at the various universities, Cal State Long Beach has a great health advising office, San Diego, UC Davis. So please seek out the folks who basically are of support specifically for the pre-health profession students.